Oh yeah, same thing last year, yeah. Oh yeah. All right, everyone, I'm gonna get everyone back in the room so that we can move along with the agenda. Hello, everyone. Do we have the live stream back on as well? Awesome, great. Welcome back, everyone. We are going to dive right back into the agenda. I'm looking at the time, it's 3 o'clock. We're a little bit behind schedule, but I also know that we can make up a lot of time on the next couple of agenda pieces. The big reason why we want to get out as well, for those of you who aren't aware, the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee is sitting and hearing more on C-53. They're in the process of going line by line, talking about the piece of legislation. It's moving along. For all of those who are watching here in the room and watching on the live stream, including Canadian officials, we really hope that they will get through it today in full. So with that, we want to ensure that as many of you who want to be there as possible can make it. And so they will be sitting at 4:30 today at the Wellington building, and we'll get the details of where the Wellington building is for you. But we want to wrap up as quickly as possible so that we can get you over there, get you through security and into the room to show the individuals who are making this decision on our behalf, which is wrong in its own right. We want to show them that we are there to watch them do the right thing and to finally pass Bill C-53 through this committee process and get it into third reading and get it through the Senate process so that we can see royal assent on Bill C-53. So we want to get as much support out there as possible. So we're going to go through this really quickly. We have 3 things left on the agenda. This quick presentation as well, that goes right into our priorities reporting, where we're at with the resolutions from last year. We have to hear from the Resolutions Committee on the process that they want to see through. And then we have our expert panel from the 2021 and 2022 General Assembly resolutions here to introduce themselves to you and talk about the process that is currently underway to implement that expert panel resolution. So to dive right in here, the reason why I want to do this presentation for the General Assembly is because many of you are new around this table, and many of you haven't seen this presentation on the work that is underway at the Métis National Council to truly embed collaboration in all of the work that we're doing at the Métis National Council. When I was elected, I wanted to ensure that what I said to you when I was elected, that the MNC is not a government, that you are the government. I wanted to make that reality, and we're changing the way that we work together, and that's really important. And this is good Important work for you to understand as we pave the way tomorrow with the resolutions process as well. So I'll go through this really quickly, but we will make this presentation available to all of you so that you have it and we can continue to talk about it. We can continue to evolve this. This is not set in stone. This is just some of the newer ways that we are working together, but we can always continue to improve. So we also do this presentation for a lot of our federal colleagues to ensure that they know the role of the Métis National Council and the way that we do our work. And the way that we talk about the Métis National Council as the driver versus the MNC Secretariat, which is the vehicle. We talk about what the Métis National Council is versus what the Métis National Council is not. And simply, the Métis National Council is a federation of your Métis governments, and the Métis National Council is not the Métis government. We are a collaborative national and international advocacy body and policy forum. We do not set the policy at the Métis National Council. That is done here collaboratively at the General Assembly. The way that we do this work is through convening, through research and policy coordination, and through strategic relationship building with different partners at the federal level and on the international level. Again, the Métis National Council is not the decision maker. We are not the program delivery body. That rests solely within your jurisdictions, and we are not an autonomous entity. That is certain because we do this work with you every single day. The role of the Métis National Council and how we do it. And again, this piece of work is ongoing. We are engaged right now in the early stages of distinctions-based planning, strategic planning processes with the Board of Governors, and we're going to be expanding that process to all of the elected officials. The early stage of this process right now that's underway is with our planner, who is having conversations one-on-one with each of the presidents to start the conversation, to figure out what it is that we need to start our conversations with, and we'll be continuing that work in the new year. But at this point, the role of the Métis National Council and how we do it, in our bylaws, in those founding documents, it says that the role of the Métis National Council is responsible for enhancing and promoting the cultural, social, economic, and political interests of the Métis Nation. Again, we do this through advocacy, through convening, and through research and policy coordination. What we need to do to make that happen is build strategic relationships and partnerships. That's what we're here to do. The way that we roll this work out is through a number of different fora that are available to us. Our permanent bilateral mechanism process, which was established in 2017 through the Canada Métis Nation Accord, is one of those ways that we advance our collective priorities with the federal government. We attend dozens of federal, provincial, territorial, and Indigenous meetings throughout the year on priorities that are available, or that are priorities that are important to the Métis Nation, to ensure that we're finding ways to do that cross collaboration with those jurisdictions. We do this work at the United Nations. We do this work through standing committees and parliamentary committees, Senate committees. And we do all of this work in collaboration with the Métis governments, and I can show you how we do that. It's hard to see on this slide specifically, but these are some of the collaborative bodies that currently exist within the Métis National Council and the structure that exists. Of course, we have our General Assembly, Board of Governors. We have our senior officials tables, which is comprised of the senior officials within your Métis governments who we meet on almost a weekly basis with our senior officials at the Métis National Council. We have national technical committees, and we're going to have more of these conversations as we look to create further collaboration. But national technical committees with MNC staff in all of these different policy areas, collaborating honestly on a daily basis with the technicians within your Métis governments on environment, child and family services, health, economic development, justice, language, education, skills, and training. What's important to note here is that these technical committees, they're not the decision makers. You are the decision makers at this forum. So we have been working to really instill this process of policy setting here at the Métis National Council General Assembly, like we did last year, by highlighting all of those priority areas, giving that broad direction to our technicians to go away and to do this work. And then, of course, the Office of the President and CEO, which is responsible for the management of the Secretariat and the chief spokesperson of the MNC. The scope of the collaborative decision-making here comes directly from those foundational documents. Again, this is not made up. This comes from our bylaws. And so what we've got here, of course, is the structure of how we make our decisions. The Métis National Council General Assembly being that highest body to set that policy direction, to set the direction of the Métis National Council. Our Board of Governors charged with implementing the direction of our National Assembly. I'm working on a regular basis with our Board of Governors and with our technicians and with our senior officials who are our Métis Public Service, who are doing this work day in and day out to make sure that these pieces are implemented on a regular basis. Our national technical committees, again, it's a venue for the MNC and the governing members to convene and discuss the matters that are taking place within each of your jurisdictions. They're the ones who are designing and delivering programs and services for your citizens, and therefore they understand, the policy changes that need to take place at this federal level. How does this benefit the governing members and contribute to our objectives? It facilitates that collaboration that is required at this national level. The collaboration to continue to advocate at this national level. And I think on the next slide, I'll skip through. I'm going really quickly through this to make sure that we've got some time. But I'll get back to the National Technical Committee and the role that they play in every single one of those areas where I was talking about the permanent bilateral mechanism. We make sure that those technical committees are engaged in moving forward the joint priority notes that we're moving forward at the PBM. They are involved in the writing and the drafting of those accords and those sub-accords, the work plans. The technical committees are consulted on a regular basis when I go to the standing committees, to the parliamentary committees, to the Senate committees, to make sure that your voices are always echoed here in Ottawa. And they're the ones who are doing this work on a regular basis with our technicians. Each of our technical committees do have different terms of reference that they create. Again, the biggest point here is that they are not making the ultimate decision for us. That decision comes to the General Assembly and comes through the General Assembly. I don't necessarily have to go through these slides about the permanent bilateral mechanism. We know what that is, and we can have more discussions about this. Again, this presentation is a lot for those partners that we do work with to show them the way that we do our work. The permanent bilateral mechanism, though, we've worked really hard over the last 2 years to get back up on its feet. And we've done that in a really good way. We have finally set a terms of reference that has been endorsed by the Prime Minister for that permanent bilateral mechanism, outlining the ways in which we will do this work together. We have set our joint priorities. We have set off on the creation of those working groups at the technical level who work through the work plans and start to work towards implementing the direction that you have given us. For example, a 10-year health accord, renewing the economic development sub-accord. That is the work that's happening at the permanent bilateral mechanism. Unfortunately, there has been a little bit of a stall in the permanent bilateral mechanism due to the cabinet shuffle that took place this summer. We saw a number of cabinet ministers that we are working with shuffled into new roles. And new people filling those roles. So we're in the process of rebuilding those relationships and getting that back up on its feet. We hope to have a resolution on the floor tomorrow to reinforce the importance of this permanent bilateral mechanism and the way that we want to do this work. Federal, provincial, territorial, and Indigenous meetings. Again, this is something that we're constantly doing, and the technical working groups are constantly working on the important points that need to be brought forward in these meetings. I don't need to talk about that. I'm going to skip through these. I just wanted to talk about how all of these processes come together at the national level. And this is all setting the stage for creating further collaboration with each of you. What we have tomorrow is a resolution to create more opportunities for elected officials, those of you who hold portfolios, to be involved in these conversations. So for example, the way that we do this work, I want to talk specifically about the Métis Nation Vision for Health. So what we had done was a while back at this National Assembly, we had identified that there was a common need amongst all of our Métis governments, and that was to fight for equitable healthcare for Métis citizens. The way that we ended up doing that was your Métis governments, they went away, you engaged with your citizens, you came up with the needs and the priorities of your citizens for healthcare. The technical working group, that's when they came in and they did that national level collaboration to roll up all of those engagements that took place within your jurisdictions, and they produced the Métis Nation Vision for Health. The Métis Nation Vision for Health was adopted last year at the General Assembly and gave us the mandate to go out and start implementing it, as well as to negotiate that 10-year accord for healthcare. The way that those other bodies that I was talking about come into play is really important. So we went and myself, I think Minister Friesen was there, a number of other elected officials had the opportunity to present to the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Standing Committee on how to improve equitable healthcare for Indigenous people. Because we had the vision for health, because we knew what those priorities of our Métis citizens were for health, we were able to reiterate over and over again what those priorities were. And the result of that was actually a report that was produced. And in that report, because of this collective advocacy, because of the way that we had all come together and worked on this, was a recommendation in this report that stated that the Government of Canada has to work with our Métis governments to ensure that Métis people who are currently not eligible for non-insured health benefits have access to health services comparable to that of other Indigenous people, and that the Government of Canada do so while continuing to close the gap in services between Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous populations. And why this is so important is that it provides us with another tool to use to continue advocating for the needs and priorities of our Métis citizens. I wanted to show this slide that's been put together around why this MNC collaboration matters. And then also, this is setting the stage for talking about how we further collaboration at the Métis National Council. And this is why MNC collaboration matters, is because alone, we have voices that get lost amongst the many. There are a lot of people who come to Ottawa, a lot of Indigenous people who come to Ottawa to advocate for their communities, for their citizens, for their Métis governments. But when we can come together at the national level and advocate together for those things that really matter, like equitable healthcare for Métis citizens, we can really make a difference. So the next steps in strengthening collaboration and talking about how all of this comes together, like I said, the Board of Governors is working through a distinctions-based planning process. We have our presidents in progress working with a planner right now. They are working to identify the needs of the governing members as it relates to the Métis National Council. As I had said earlier, we're 40 years into the Métis National Council. We need to start picturing what the next 40 years looks like and how we can facilitate that change to work directly with you. Another piece of this is the bylaw modernization. That committee is meeting early in the new year. We have a terms of reference that was passed by the Board of Governors in September, and we have appointees from each of your governing members as well as staff technicians to support that work. That's going to be really critical coming up in this next year on how we continue to move forward. We have the MNC Secretariat work plan development, and I believe it's the annual report is a summary of what that work is. Our governing members have that policy plan. The presidents of the governing members have that policy plan. And what that is it clearly articulates the way that each of our policy sectors are working and what they are working to achieve based on the direction of this National Assembly. Finally, what this is all coming down to is a resolution that we want to bring forward tomorrow on enhanced collaboration with our elected officials. It was a conversation that happened at the General Assembly last year, and it was tabled to this year to talk about how we better work together with our elected officials. This presentation demonstrates that our technical committees, they are off the ground, they are running, they are working together, they are collaborating, they are working together so well, but what's missing is further collaboration with each of you. We have our Board of Governors, we have our National Assembly, we have our technical committee. What's missing is committees where each of you who are leading important files in health, in child and family services, in education and environment, how do we bring you together to talk about how to keep moving these files forward? So we have a terms of reference that is drafted for what we are tentatively calling either leaders committees or priorities committees. For those of you who understand the AFN's governance structure, they have special chiefs committees that continue to move these pieces forward. So I hope that we're able to move that forward tomorrow so that we can continue down this path of collaboration. And I know I rushed through this really, really quickly, but it is because I want to get us all to INAN. So I will provide this presentation to all of you, and we can continue to have these conversations. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm happy to meet with individual caucuses as well so that we can continue to move this forward. I did, just with a few more minutes, want to provide an update on the 2022 General Assembly resolutions. Many of them were referenced in here. I'm going to go through them really quickly. We can have time to talk about them on the break, and figure out where we go with the resolutions tomorrow. Going through them, they are in the meeting minutes from last year's General Assembly. I'll start with the National Youth Council. We were mandated to go out to create the National Youth Council. We have done just that. We had the terms of reference passed by the Board of Governors on September 28th. That terms of reference was created in collaboration with all of the provincial youth representatives. They provided their report this morning. Of course, they just had their first meeting yesterday, so we're happy to have that up and running. The second resolution that was passed last year, this is aside from a bulk of the bylaw resolutions that were passed. All of those bylaw resolutions, the changes to the MNC bylaws have been implemented. You have a new copy of the MNC bylaws with those resolutions included. Resolution number 10 from last year was the bylaw committee. Slow progress on that one, and I will be the first to admit. The terms of reference was approved by the Board of Governors on September 28th. The bylaw committee will meet in early January of 2024 to begin their work. We have appointees to the bylaw committee. So for MNBC, we have Patrick Harriott, supported by John Beaker. For MNA, we have Shannon Dunfield, supported by Tyler Fetch. For MNS, we have Autumn Lang-LaRose, supported by Chris Gall. For MNO, we have Hank Rowlandson, supported by someone yet to be named. For LFMO, we have Melanie Omenaho, supported by Victoria Pruden. And for MNC, we have myself, who will be supported by one of our MNC staff. So at this point, a large package has been sent to the bylaw committee with the initial bylaw review that was completed by legal early last year. That's just an initial place to start. That's a legal review to make sure that we are in compliance with the law at this point. And like I said, the bylaw committee will be starting their work in early 2024 and be able to provide any updates to the Board of Governors and then to the General Assembly next fall. There was it was a consensus decision that was tabled for consideration at the General Assembly that we will be bringing back tomorrow, which was establishing the governing members' policy tables. More on that tomorrow, and I believe Patrick will be here to help me on that one because this is really important. What we're looking to do at this point is create the following committees, and we can talk more about what those committees which more committees we can implement, but at this point we're looking at child and family services, economic development, languages, and health as those are some of those priority areas that we are working on through the permanent bilateral mechanism. We had a resolution last year where it emphasized the MNC General Assembly's support for survivors of Isle Lacrosse and the Timber Bay boarding schools. And I hope at some point Vice President Michelle Leclerc will be able to provide you all with a really more fulsome update on the work that's happening by Métis Nation Saskatchewan supporting those survivors and doing that really good work. But the resolution that was passed last year was to have MNC support in any way, and we do that by trying to emphasize the stories, using as many opportunities as we can to highlight the injustice that still exists by not recognizing those residential school survivors. When we got into the policy areas last year, we had a mandate from this General Assembly to develop, in collaboration with the governing members, the UNDRIP action plan. We consider that resolution both complete and in progress. The action plan for the United Nations Declaration Rights on the Indigenous Peoples, that action plan is complete. It was tabled in Parliament on June 21st of 2023. We worked collaboratively with the governing members to approve a Métis-specific chapter with the priority areas. We also worked with ITK and AFN to develop joint priority areas. And we consider this also in progress because now we are tasked with implementing that action plan. And so that piece is in progress. The second resolution on policy that came through last year was the Education 10-year Accord. That is also considered in progress. Education, primary, secondary, has been added as a permanent bilateral mechanism priority for this year. That was approved by the Prime Minister, and so we're in the process right now of working through the PBM process to negotiate that accord. The next policy area was on economic development and adopting those economic development priorities. Again, that's in progress. In Budget 2023, as well as in Budget 2024, we are advocating collectively to ensure that our economic development priorities are heard here in Ottawa, and hopefully we can see some money dedicated to those priorities in Budget 2024. For example, we really need to be pushing for the recapitalization of our capital corporations who are doing such incredible work in our Métis governments, and such good work that they need to be recapitalized to continue that good work. We're also pushing to support funds for the Métis governments to develop their own business directories, verified Métis business directories. There are targets out there, procurement targets that governments are trying to meet, but how do we know if those Métis businesses are actually Métis businesses unless they are linked to business directories that are run by you, our Métis governments? So we're pushing for that. And we're also pushing to support our Métis governments in the business development funds, to be able to continue to support your businesses to grow, to revitalize that Métis economy. And so those priorities were adopted last year. We continue to push for those priorities to be implemented. The other policy area that was pushed for, and I showed in this presentation, was on health. And that one is still in progress. And we have a lot of conversations to continue to figure out exactly where we're going to go with this. We know where we're going. We know the supports that are needed in our Métis governments to deliver equitable healthcare for Métis citizens. But the Government of Canada continues to fail Métis citizens, continues to fail our Métis governments to support them, to develop the programs and services that are so needed in our communities. And so we continue to push for health. It is a PBM priority this year. Once again, I believe it's been a PBM priority for the last 6 years. So we're working through a process to see if we can negotiate that accord for health to be able to advance those priorities in the vision for health. And we're also working strategically with other organizations at the national level to try and ensure that they understand what these priorities are. There was another resolution around the federal claims process and the MNC advocating for that. That is also in progress. There are a number of different mechanisms that allow us to continue this work. The RIRSD tables, for example, show us a process for that. Clauses through the self-government agreements allow discussions on that. We are hopefully going to be getting back together on the rights panels so that we can get together and have a conversation on how we can collectively move this forward. We have that established, that body is established. We just need to actually sit down and have the conversations on how we want to collaborate on that. And finally, which leads us into the next discussion, was the resolution on the expert panel. The expert panel was a resolution that was passed in 2021 at the General Assembly on September 20th. It was also reinforced by resolution last year in 2022. That resolution is in progress, and I'm happy to have our expert panelists here today to introduce themselves to you, to talk about the process that's currently underway. I want to talk a little bit about why it took so long to get this going, and focus less on why, but focus more on it's happening now. There were a number of calls, and our meeting minutes throughout all of the Board of Governors show that a number of calls for presidents of the Board of Governors to appoint their panelists. It took some time. There was about 3 or 4 different occasions that call was made, and unfortunately, it was not met. However, we have done that now. We have panelists who have been appointed by each of our governing members, and that work is underway. That work is arm's length from any of our political processes. It's happening on its own, supported through MNC staff, but not through MNC politics. And so I'm happy to, at this point, bring up the expert panel to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the work that's underway. So thank you, everyone. I know that was a really quick overview of some of that work that's happening and how it's happening through the Métis National Council, but we're short on time, and I'm happy to continue these conversations in the halls. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And I've got him.
Tanse, how's everybody doing? Good. Did you get a chance to taste the apples coated in 3 inches of sugar? They're really, really good, just saying. If you didn't, I might have eaten somebody else's rations because I had 3. So I just want to say good afternoon to everybody. My name is Marilyn Putra. I had the privilege of working with you at your last General Assembly in Vancouver, and some of you will remember me from there, and others of you will remember me from other places, and we'll just leave it at that. And I just want to take the opportunity to say that the panel has been meeting over the last couple of days, and we're just gonna let you know where we're at in that process and who we are and some of the things that we still have to do. We understand that this is basically a meet and greet, so you can put some of the faces to the names that you have. You'll have access to our bios, and so you'll have had the opportunity to look a little bit at that and see who the people are. We're brand new. We're 15 minutes old. The wings are not dry in any way, and so I just really want to be clear about the fact that we are just getting our feet under us, but wanted to take the opportunity to come and be able to say hi to you. So we can just get the first slide. Oh, is there this is mine? For sure. So that's me, and everybody kind of knows who I am. You know that I'm a half-breed from the Qu'Appelle Valley in Saskatchewan. My father's family was Rhode Island's half-breeds down in the valley by Katepwa, and I've got some Irish-Scottish lineage on my mother's side. I've got my own little brood of kids that I've brought along, and have had the opportunity to work on a number of different issues in the community for most of my legal career, from elections through constitutional reform to looking at what kind of justice bodies we might consider within Métis Nation Saskatchewan, and I'm doing some work right now on the development of a court within the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan's justice portfolio. So have done a little bit of work and have had the opportunity to present to you in a few different forums on a number of occasions. So I'm really happy. I'm honored to be asked to sit with this panel. And I just want to be very clear from the outset that the panel is taking its work as being independent quite seriously, and that we're making sure that we get all the ducks lined up before we jump into this, and we fully appreciate all the pressures around doing it well, doing it clearly, being transparent with our process, and being open to all of the information so that we can connect all the dots that are in the history and in the contemporary governance processes as we go through this process. So let me just introduce some of the folks for you. I'm just going to call their names and they're going to get a chance to come. You can hear their voices, and they'll get a chance to say hello. So first we've got Shelley Nimi, Dr. Shelley Nimi.
Thank you, Marilyn. Good afternoon. My name is Shelley. I want to tell you a little bit about myself and who I am. At birth, my name is Destiny Fiddler, and I was raised by my great aunt. I was born in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and I was raised in Prince George. My work has been focused in around Indigenous education my entire career. And so for me, I spend a lot of time navigating through what does it look like for our children in the education system as the director of Indigenous education. So really looking at it from a distinctions-based lens, really looking at cultural safety, looking at the ability to navigate through policy and governance. I am sitting here and I've been selected by MNBC to be the representative on this panel. We do a ton of work in the way that we're navigating through looking at how to, for the work that I do, navigate through, I'm going to talk in the sense of looking for our children and holding the ability for them to be seen and heard within our education system. And so this past year is our first year that we've had to be able to stand really strongly in the sense that we signed a tripartite agreement in education with MNBC, with our chartered community in Victoria, and a school board. And we signed a Métis education agreement. And we really wanted to look at that from a distinctions-based lens. And so for me, coming onto the panel to do the work here really is about, bringing in that cultural safety lens to be able to be a part of that review. I spent a lot of time examining governance and structures, and I'm really happy to be here to be part of that process as we navigate forward in the critical work ahead for us. So I want to thank you. My bio is there. I don't want to read it because that's making me a little nervous. But an elder did say that when you feel that nervousness, what that really is it's your ancestors so excited for you, right? So I'm going to hold on to that and know that we're doing this work in a really good way, and that's the intention. And so I'm really happy to be here and to see you and to meet you. And I look forward to the work ahead and the updates as we continue to grow.
Next up, we have Dr. Dylan Miner.
Thanks, Marilyn, and thanks, Shelley. And I'll follow suit and just briefly introduce myself. Likewise, I'm honored and humbled to serve on this panel and to be an appointee to this panel. As Marilyn said, my name is Dylan Miner. I'm an MNO citizen and a descendant of the Larondel family. In terms of my professional identity, I'm trained as an artist and a historian, and I serve as a professor and a senior associate dean across the medicine line in the state of Michigan, where I was born and raised as well. So that's the professional work I bring to this. Larry's going to talk a little bit about the process of the panel and kind of move us forward, but I just want to share in the same way that Shelley did. Yesterday we met with the Grandmothers Council and the youth as well. And one of the things that I took away from one of the teachings that a grandmother shared with us, that is that, that the time is now to do some of this work, and so I look forward to moving this work forward, and that's something that I think we heard yesterday from the grandmothers and the youth as well. So, merci miigwech, and thank you.
Tansi, Natotam, bonjour, hello. Those are our traditional official languages, by the way, the Red River and Métis Nation going forward. So I thought I better at least introduce myself with those languages, Cree, Ojibwe, French, and English. I've come from the prairies. I was born in Alberta. My father was born in Pearceland and harvested around Grand Cache area. He was a sheet metal mechanic, and so we traveled Alberta, wherever the work was, and I wound up in St. Albert. My parents were a little bit on the wild side, so I kind of wound up having to get through high school on my own. And so that kind of made me a fairly independent guy going forward since high school. And I've always believed in Métis rights. My great-grandfather was from Willow Bunch, Zachary Chartrand, and Zachary Chartrand Sr. And from there, his father was from Whitehorse Plains, and his father was from St. Laurent. So when I come up here as a child of the prairies and as a Métis man who believes in our people and a united people. But that's all I'm going to say on that matter, because I've been appointed by the Métis Nation of Alberta to help with this project of trying to come to terms with the resolutions regarding the 7 Ontario communities. So moving forward, in terms of our current progress, I want you to realize that we're still quite new. The first meeting was in September. Terms of reference were developed then, and some key principles to guide our process forward. We then met in October, and we were concerned that we hadn't had the independent experts appointed yet, so we worked on that at that meeting, as well as identifying some other plans for moving the project forward. And then on November 17th, we reviewed the expressions of interest from the independent experts, and we appointed Kurt Boyer, and then that was the work of most recent work. And then finally, in the last couple of days, we've been actually very busy. We've been working with the Grandmothers Council to help us guide us in terms of some of the fundamental principles. I'm a strong believer that the laws we should apply should be our own laws and not necessarily Canadian laws. And so I feel that we need to listen to who possesses that knowledge, as well as the youth, who we're doing this work for. So we had the youth come into our session, and we were very grateful for the input they provided. They were very direct and questioned us, and I think that is important. So we've asked the Grandmother Council if they'd be participants in our process to help us guide us forward, and I believe they all agreed, and I believe the youth as well have now come to terms with the idea of trying to help us move forward as well. We will learn from them what that role will be. We're not telling any of these, the Grandmother Council or the youth, what role they'll have. They're telling us what role they're going to play, and we're going to embrace that and move forward that way. And so we're kind of at that step. Our first quarterly report, our upcoming meetings, first of all, will be in January. We're going to have an in-person, not an in-person meeting of the panel, but a virtual meeting to kind of get our planning set for the rest of the work that we have to do, which, as you can see, involves a number of roundtables. The first one being set for February 27th, where we hope to have the 7 Ontario communities come and meet with us and tell us their stories so we can hear directly from them. And then the same thing with March 19th for the Métis Nation BC. Tell us your stories about what you think is relevant to this issue that we're dealing with. Same with Alberta in April, and then finally Saskatchewan and Saskatoon in May. And then these roundtables will help us inform our findings so that we can offer some guidance to the Métis Nation in terms of going forward on this very contentious, very difficult issue. And certainly we have appreciated the Board of Governors staying very distant from us and not interfering with our work. And I think that's really important that we go forward with that in mind. But the Board of Governors does have a lot of work ahead of them. Well, not a lot of work, but we do need to hear from them. This gives us an idea of how we intend to report back to you. We'll have 4 quarterly reports with a final draft anticipated for the fall of 2024. And we'll ensure that we have heard, we'll identify who we've heard from, what we've heard, the overview of the meetings, all the literature that's been published, all the historical literature, which I don't know if you know how much there's a lot, so we're working through that. And then there's preliminary findings we hope to we'll have sections devoted to the Grandmothers Council's words, and we'll have sections devoted to the youth in the reports as well. Finally, this is a slide that indicates the participation of the Grandmothers Council in our meetings, which we've really appreciated in Miigwech. And throughout the process, we have the Youth Council. Hopefully, they'll come up with an idea of how they want to be involved in our process and get their input. And then with the expert panel submissions, this is where the Board of Governors needs to be able to provide us with any relevant documentation on this issue. Literature, presentations. If you're going to make a submission, it has to be received by us by January 31st in order for us to be able to do our analysis and work to come up with the findings that will help us in the fall. And then finally, individuals. This is an open process. Any individual can make a submission to our panel. And what we will do is provide an email here for where you can make those submissions. So individuals are welcome to make submissions, and we will entertain those requests and look at them in due course. So I'll leave you with that, and Marilyn may have some additional points to make. So thank you very much.
So there you have it. You've got some faces to put to this. I'll let you know that we're pretty serious about the submission dates, and so we want to let you know that we've got a growing list of documents that each panel member is working through. All of the panel members are fully employed otherwise, and so we've agreed that we will take 6 days a month to work on this. I think there's a lot of questions about what's taking so long and why would it take that long, and just process alone. I'm trying to get people to imagine when you paint the inside of your house, you just don't go in with a paintbrush and paint all the walls. You got a lot of things to do to put the furniture aside and drape things and tape things and cut in and do all those things. We're doing that right now. And that your submissions are important to be early. Why? Because we've got so much reading, and by the time we get to your community to hear from you, if you show up with binders of information, we won't be ready to hear from you. So we need to have those in advance. We'll put reminder calls out because we know you like reminders, and so we'll send those out so that you get a nudge on the 15th of January to make those submissions. And we'll be posting through the MNC website some of those nudges and open indications, and we're working right now through process. How will we extend invitations to people who have an interest and something to say on the very issue that we are looking at? We are not here to define who Métis people are. That has not been asked of us. That is not our job. We're very clear about that. We've also, I just want to really highlight that we're committed to using a process that we think is engaging community, that is respectful, and that is inclusive. So we're going to go with a round table approach when we meet with people. We met with grandmothers for 3 hours yesterday, and we met with youth for about an hour yesterday, and not a word of a lie. We've got quotes out of there, we've got a direction out of there, we've got passion and insight out of there with just one afternoon of that. We have been committed since day one to nationhood, families, children, and elders, and so we're going to put our money where our mouth is about that. We are still figuring out process. We are still figuring out, are we complying with the terms of reference? What does that look like? What are the roles? All of those kinds of things. So again, it's really early days, and we appreciate the patience around that. You will get our first quarterly report at the end of January, even though we're just getting started, because we didn't want to put that off for 3 months and extend it even longer. But when we start to hear from more and more people, we may have to extend the hearing dates. And so bear with us. We'll keep you updated. Our plan is that all information comes through Madison Tipler for us as the support person that's been given to us through MNC's office, and that our correspondence will go through President Caron out to the Board of Governors, so that we're not having private meetings with people about anything, that we've got a clear direction coming in and out. So I know you have a lot of deliberations and things to think about, and you've got a whole day of meetings tomorrow, so that's kind of our show for today, and we just appreciate your patience, and thanks very much for the time to meet you today.
Do we entertain any questions or anything?
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I think the last thing is to call the Resolutions Committee up to do a report on your expectations for the process for resolutions tonight and tomorrow. Yeah.
Russian so everybody can leave. We got a committee. So my name is Tyler Fetch. I'm once again the chair of the Resolutions Committee, and I'm the representative for the Métis Nation of Alberta on the committee. So I was going to go over process and expectations. So we ask that your resolutions are formatted properly. They have a title, a preamble with whereas clauses, therefore be it resolved clauses, one or two, as many as you need to get to your point. Both the mover and the seconder, full names at the bottom of the resolution. We also ask that along with those names, that the mover and seconder provide a contact information like cell phone, just in case there's questions and you have time to edit, right? So for a lot of you, this is old news, but this is the process. So the mover and seconder cell phone information, like I said, just in case we have questions, we'll remove those numbers when it goes to presentation. As a note, the mover must be present when the resolution is brought to the floor, otherwise it cannot be moved or voted on, with exceptions for extenuating circumstances. I know people are getting sick and you never know what'll happen, so emergencies happen. Resolutions must be Métis Nation or Métis National Council in scope and intent. Please keep each resolution on one topic only. They should not propose or require bylaw amendments or conflict with the bylaws. That's our job to make sure that doesn't happen. And must not require or direct specific financial commitments. If there's a deadline that you expect for the resolution or for an action to be completed, please include that appropriate milestone, such as a start or an end time. Resolutions must be in Word document format and provided as an email attachment, or you could put them on a USB memory key. And we encourage you to double check with the resolutions committee person you submit. You should submit to your resolution committee member, and they will confirm that they received it. Please submit them before the deadline. And if you have any questions about this process, every committee member has this process on hand, so you can speak to them about it. We will then take the resolutions, format them, number them, and collate them. And we set the deadline, same as last year, so the 10 p.m. local time, so 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is your deadline for submitting your resolution. And that's all. Thank you.
I'll open it if there's any questions. We can get some clarification if a question comes up, but if there's not, then I think we'll be adjourning for the day. Any questions regarding the process? So we have Tyler here. Seeing any? Great job, Tyler, setting that out nice and clearly. Perfect. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we are at the end of our scheduled business for today. So there is the reception this evening. There's the presentation. And just a moment.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for a great first day. It feels good to get through the first day of the agenda and with all of our pieces in order. Just a few logistics pieces for everybody. For those of you who are interested in attending the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee, it is on 197 Sparks Street. So that is the Wellington Building. Wellington Building will take, if you put Wellington Building into your Google Maps, it'll take you to the wrong entrance. So put in 197 Sparks Street. And it is in room 425. You do have to pass through parliamentary security before entering into the building. Make sure that you have a piece of ID with you. And then if you try to leave as many of your belongings here at the hotel as possible to expedite that security process. So that starts at 4:30. It should probably go for about 2 hours. We are also hosting a reception tonight at the Métis National Council head office. The location for that is 180 Elgin Street, and it is on the 6th floor, but there will be staff who will be there to greet you and bring you in. Lots of food and beverages and celebration. We invite you to come and see our space here in Ottawa and to visit with one another tonight. And then, of course, tomorrow night is when we will have our banquet and performances. That will be a good way to end the assembly. So, what time is the reception? 5:30? Okay, it starts at 5:30, so those of you who are going to INAN, we'll still be at the office probably by the time that's finished, so still feel free to come by. For those of you who are not going to INAN, the doors for the reception at the office will open at 5:30. So we hope to see you all tonight, and I hope you have a good rest, and we'll see you all tomorrow if we don't see you tonight. Great, thank you everyone.